Thank you. Welcome, everyone, to this meeting of the Guelph Police Services Board. And I'm going to call the meeting to order. And first off, we're going to do the territorial acknowledgement. Today, we acknowledge the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nations of the Anishinaabe peoples on whose traditional territory we are meeting. Okay, item number 3 on your agendas is, are there any declarations of pecuniary conflict or pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? Not seeing any. There are no closed session resolutions under item 4. And now we can move right into our presentation today. And we have with us the Director of Campus Safety, David Lee, with us, who is going to give us a presentation on various items. And I believe the slides are in your, will be in, David, your slides will be on the screen, is that correct? Oh, you're muted, David.
Sorry about that. No, there's no slide deck on this. The report was sent forward, so it's more of just a summary of the activities that went on, as opposed to going and restating everything that people could have already read. So,
okay. Well, the floor is yours. If you'd like to proceed, welcome.
Thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity to, as I do every year, to present to the board. And we certainly do enjoy a great working relationship with the Guelph Police and Guelph Bylaw, as well as the other services in town, fire and EMS. I want to start off by saying this is our COVID year, and what I mean by that is not a whole lot of regular things happened on campus. So it's very difficult to make quantitative statements and comparables and trends analysis from this year to previous years, because it just wasn't the same. And, you know, everyone knows that. Everyone knows what happened. The campus was shut down. There was very little activity. So this presentation is going to be rather brief in that sense, because we can't get into plans and moving forward because of things just didn't, as trends didn't occur. So it's difficult to make plans to correct them. The biggest thing that happened administratively is we changed our name. Our name is now the Campus Safety Office. It used to be Campus Community Police, as many people remember. We're now the Campus Safety Office. That started years ago with ministry making changes to what's called the Police Services Act at the time, and what we're allowed to use as our identifiers. So the word police has disappeared from us, our shoulder flashes, our cars, our email, everything. We do not use the word police anymore. And that's been well received on campus. We haven't had any negative feedback at all, and things seem to be moving ahead quite well. As a quick overview of the service, we have 19 sworn special constables. Sworn means that the Guelph Police Services Board has sworn us in and given us authority under 7 provincial acts, things like the Liquor Act, the Mental Health Act, the Trespass Act. And of those 19, 3 are administrative, including myself, and 16 are frontline officers that patrol 24/7, 365. So we have a 24-hour operation from January to December. We don't stop, and we're always on campus. Even when the campus is closed, we're always there. In terms of just quickly, we also have 4 dispatchers that are there 24/7. We have some part-time dispatchers to fill in case of sickness or vacation. And in short, we are always answering the phone. There will always be somebody there on campus, exactly like a police service or other emergency services. In terms of staffing, we only had 1 change this year. One of our officers got hired by a police service, a local police service. And so we filled that position with a retired Guelph Police Service member, Tom Gill. So that's what's happened in this last reporting period. Tom brings with him a massive amount of experience in policing, and I try and balance the people I have on my staff between former police officers and civilians who are interested in policing, interested in community support, interested in helping people on campus that can learn how to do police procedure things, such as arresting people or community engagement or safety planning, things like that. So we have a good balance of former police officers and civilians that make up our 19 sworn people. In terms of what we did last year, our calls were way down. No surprise. They dropped way down. Our reportable incidents, and on the report it says escalated incidents. I'll have to change that. Escalated incidents means reported incidents are down almost 50%. So it was because of COVID. No one was there relatively, so things slowed right down. Of highlight of the work that we did, we had only 5 criminal charges, very few traffic charges, 27 liquor charges. We would normally do that on a weekend, on a really, really busy weekend, but it was hardly anything during the year last year. Trespass. Of note though, something that happened on our campus that didn't happen on any other campus in Ontario that I'm aware of, is we issued 84 of the COVID tickets, as people call them, the $750 COVID tickets. That was because the university took very seriously the need to enforce the COVID rules. We started off in the fall last year, so a year ago, taking an educative approach. We have some small internal fines that were issued. That wasn't working, and we needed to get a handle on this. So it was decided at the university administrative level that the provincial fine should be levied on campus, so that we started. And we still had a number of students on campus still living in residence, and 84 tickets were issued up till April of last year. And since then, only one. We've only had to lay one since April of last year. So April of this year, I mean. So that was our demonstration of how seriously we took COVID. We have so many students living in residence, very close quarters, and they have to follow the rules. It's not just students, there's staff and there's faculty, and the rules had to be enforced. So they were. Sadly, it's not something we wanted to do, but that's what ended up happening. So basically, calls for service are way down. One of the incidents that we were surprised at is the break-and enters. The break-and enters were way up for some reason, and we figure it's because the campus was empty relatively. So people who were of that way thought that maybe here's an opportunity to sneak around. Fewer eyes at nighttime. Very few people out at nighttime. So we ended up having a lot of break-ins that were occurring on campus, and we do have, working closely with Guelph, we have a number of suspects that we're still working on, see if we can't close those occurrences off. But that's of concern. So in anticipation of more foot traffic from people that were coming onto campus to break in, we increased our targeted proactive patrols by 2.5 times. So they shot up. So we had officers that targeted areas that typically get, attempted break and enter or break and enter into with poorly lit doorways, things like that. And we made sure that we went through residences and buildings that were supposed to be vacant, sometimes finding people that weren't supposed to be in those buildings. So we really ramped up our proactive patrol. So even though the campus was empty and our calls were way down, my officers were still busy. That's what we kept them doing to make sure that we didn't become that soft target, a softer target for criminals that were coming onto campus to ply their trade. One of the calls for service types that we always report on are bike thefts. Well, our bike thefts, if you look at it, are way, way down. Well, it's because no one was here riding bikes. They just weren't on campus. So, and what we've experienced this year is a spike in bike thefts. So since the end of this report, which was May 1st, our bike thefts have gone through the roof. And just recently, it was just in the paper yesterday or the day before about a cooperative effort between my folks and Guelph police officers to identify 2 people, and they were arrested on 19 of those. I think it was about 45 bike thefts. I can't remember since May 1st, but so we're making headway. We're trying to identify those people with the help of Guelph Police to make sure that we can stop the bike theft. Yeah, so in short, it's kind of a non-report year where there's not a whole lot to say about what's going on, other than the report for next year. So this time next year, it'll be completely different as we have residences that are full and things are coming back to normal. And as people start coming back onto campus, we have all the issues with fender benders and parking lots and things like that. That's all starting to ramp up again. So we'll get back to a normal situation by this time next year, I'm anticipating. So in terms of a report, because it was more of a non-event year, I think that's where I'll conclude it, is right there, and take any questions or inquiries.
Are there any questions for David? I guess if not much has happened in the past year, there's probably not much to ask questions on.
Yeah, it's
I suppose that makes sense. Chief, you had your hand up.
No, I see the mayor through you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, you'll wait. All right, Mr. Mayor.
Well, thank you, and by all means, Chief, you can always go first. Through you, Mr. Chair, I just, because there was no questions, I wanted to ask. Make a comment, but I don't know if that's allowed at this time.
Yeah, I don't see why not.
Okay, all right, thank you. So I just want to just say that you know, you are all you and your staff there are all frontline people throughout the whole last 18 to 20, almost 20 months now. And so I know that you are looked upon as sort of, not having to deal with health things. And then all of a sudden the pandemic and COVID hits. And I just wanted to say thank you to you and your staff for having to wade through the last year on campus. Although there wasn't a lot of people there, there was new things that that you had to figure out, and to do it while keeping you and your staff safe and the community safe there on campus. So just wanted to say thank you.
I appreciate that. That's really good. Thank you.
Chief?
I just wanted to echo the mayor's thank you with a thank you from the service, Dave. I think it's important for the board and the community to know how close and connected our two organizations are, kind of the operational synergies and the working relationship in so many ways. So thanks so much, Dave, to your folks. It means a lot, and we will continue to work closely for years to come.
Yeah, thank you, Chief. And I said this last year and the year before. I think that I have probably the best, I'm saying that because the chief's sitting here, the best working relationship with the local police service. There's a number of schools, as you know, around the province, and we get treated as a team member as opposed to some outsider. And it's greatly appreciated by my officers. I really appreciate that.
Great. Well, David, on behalf of the board, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to come and speak with us today. And I think, I don't want to say maybe there'll be more stuff to report next time, because that's not what we want to do, right? We don't want to be going there. So we really do appreciate you giving us the latest update, and wish you all the best going forward. And hopefully any of the incidents or the incidents will stay somewhat subdued going forward. But I guess that remains to be seen.
Yeah, and I think that the year's starting to ramp up. It's slowly shaping up as a regular year, and I think by the time we get to January, it's going to be back in full speed. And so we'll see a lot different story this time next year.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks,
right,
David. Thanks again.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay, let's move on to the consent. Approval of the agenda, part one, consent agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the entire agenda? Part 1 is consent. Christine and Peter, thank you. Seconded by Peter. All in favor? That motion is carried. Thank you. So we'll move to the part 2, the discussion agenda. And today we have a budget update for a Q3, quarter number 3. And Chief, did you want to introduce that?
Sure. I think Lisa's on the line, so I'll just make sure Lisa can hear us. She'll probably turn on her camera here.
Hi.
Okay, there she is.
I'll let Lisa update the board with respect to the Q3.
Okay, so you have the report, and as of the end of September, we're continuing to report a surplus with year-to-date spending at 62.8% of the full year budget. The surplus, it's primarily related to the budget allocation, timing of grant revenues, and lower than budgeted salaries. The headcount is under complement by 3.95 FTE as of the end of September. And paid overtime is in a surplus with both paid and bank time overtime hours down from last year. And in regards to capital, everything is showing a surplus with the exception of the headquarters renovation report. And that's the update.
Okay.
And Mr. Chair, if I'm allowed to.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to highlight for the board, so as a function of a lot of work done internally by our members and Lisa and so many folks, this is the first time you'll probably have noted a Q3 variance with a surplus on the overtime side. So as far as kind of some staff redeployments and exceptional work by our folks, I think typically, Lisa, we would be yellow or red at this point in overtime versus green. So I just wanted to recognize that on the part of the service because there's been a great deal of work that's gone into that.
Are there any? Yes. Are there any questions from the members for Lisa or the chief? No. Oh, Rod?
Just a comment. I think the reason the overtime is down, we haven't had any major crimes like murders and stuff. That really sends the overtime up. We've been kind of lucky this year, so better keep our fingers crossed.
Well, and through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Curran, you raise a very, this is a very, very dynamic business. So we don't know what might happen from day to day that can really impact things. But it really, when we are having exorbitant amounts of overtime, there's both a financial but a wellness component for our people. And so it's really important that we're able to deliver service in a sustainable way that's healthy for our folks. And so we will continue on that work, but the trends are favorable so far.
Okay, Peter.
Yeah, is any part of the reduction in overtime, would that be sort of some of the fruit starting to come from the input of new recruits?
Yes, I think that, and probably, I guess it was almost exactly 2 years ago when we, in the investment in resources, we projected back then it'd be an 18 to 24 month timeline to start to realize that investment. And so not only is it showing more resources to actually serve the community and being on patrol, but we're able to do that without, I think we were up to 44,000 hours of overtime in 2019. So not only can we start to provide better service, but more sustainable and healthy service on the part of our folks.
Okay. Any further questions from the board members? No? Okay, not seeing any. Thank you, Lisa, for that report, and Chief for doing part of that report as well. So we'll move on to the Chief's monthly report.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I touched on a couple of these points earlier this week when I presented our budget to council, but I wanted to highlight for the board. So as of this week, our members have now responded to well over 120,000 calls for service since the start of the pandemic. And so I think as a service, it's really important to acknowledge and thank our members, their families, countless other first responders, healthcare workers, frontline workers, community leaders, and just community members in general who have supported the city for the last 20 months. It really is kind of a testament to the strength and resilience of our city. So I think that's an important thing to highlight. And I suspect a lot of people have noticed in recent weeks, our service has seen the largest recorded fentanyl seizure, along with 2 shootings and an armed bank robbery. What used to be a rarity, the presence and use of firearms in our city, is become increasingly more common. We wanted to assure the board and the community we're constantly evaluating our operations and resource deployments to ensure that we can we can respond to emerging crime trends in the most safe, effective, and efficient manner. An example of this, and Dave kind of alluded to this in his report, January will see the launch of our full-time break, enter, and auto theft team. Well, overall in 2020, our crime stats indicated that break and enters had been down. There's been in 2021 a noticeable presence of crimes like this in the community. So after 2 successful pilots over the last 2 or 3 years, that team will become full-time in January, and we look forward to seeing the fruition of that. And that's part of the kind of the agility and our ability to kind of respond to rising crime trends in certain areas. And I'll stop there. I have one more thing to update, but I'll just stop to see if there's any questions.
Questions? Not seeing any. I guess we can move on, Chief.
Okay. And then finally, at this week's Downtown Guelph Business Association AGM, we were happy to introduce Constable Connor Vivods, who's our new downtown resource officer, to everybody who was in attendance. It also gave us an opportunity to sincerely thank Constable Mark O'Connell for the truly extraordinary work that he did in the last couple of years. So Connor looks forward to his new role, and we look forward to constantly involving and improving how we can support the residents, businesses, and visitors to our downtown. And I think probably in December or January, Connor's just started this week, but he'll be making a presentation to the board so he can kind of introduce himself to you and the community in relation to that new role, because it's a critically important role for the service and the city. And with that, Mr. Chair, that's really the extent of my updates.
Are there any questions for the chief on his report? Not seeing any. That brings us to new business. Is there any new business from the members? Not seeing any. I'll just mention the information items under item 7. The next open meeting, and this is important, it will not be the third Thursday of the month. It will be the second Thursday of the month. So that means it'll be on December the 9th, 2021 at the regular time, 2:30 p.m. So just be mindful of that. And that's really it. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Christine and Cam, thank you. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much, everyone.